Welcome back, All Elite family, for episode 19 of the All Elite podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Kazir, and as always, I'm joined by my boy, Bitter Mark, AEW fan, anime fan, pro wrestling enthusiast, All Elite AJ. How are you doing, AJ?
I'm doing really good because a really good friend bought me tickets to Fyter Fest, and I was only going to go to Fight for the Fallen, and that good friend is you, and thank you.
Yeah, man. After I was unable to get all out tickets, I decided to change up and spend some of that money on some cheap Fyter Fest tickets for AJ, so that way we'd have some representation there. So that's exciting for everyone at the podcast. I'm excited for AJ. I'm excited for the show now just to have that little bit of like access there because obviously AJ will be able to send pictures to us and things like that. So I'm excited for AJ. AJ's excited about it. Um,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got, other than that, I don't have a lot going on, just been working a lot still. So we'll jump right into things about AEW. This week, we're going to discuss the all-out ticket sales, Jon Moxley's latest appearances. We'll discuss Tony Khan's interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin. They also announced a new match for Fyter Fest, and of course, the Young Bucks took a trip down to Mexico that didn't end so pleasantly for them. But let's just start off with the all-out ticket sales. We're already talking about tickets. All Out sold out in 15 minutes, they said.
Yeah.
The queue to get in to buy tickets was ridiculous. I made my attempt, and it was a feeble attempt at best. I knew I made a mistake by working that morning and having to try and work and buy tickets at the same time. I was ready to go, but like apparently 70,000 other people were. So,
Yeah, I think they said at max it was 123,000. I don't know if that's true. And we're going to get more into that later about what Brandy said about the ticket sales, but needless to say, it's sold out, and I think that's what everybody expected. I mean, as far as the fans go.
yeah, I was definitely expecting tickets to sell out rather quickly. I thought that I would have a good chance just being in the
Hmm.
waiting line and
I
things like
thought you
that
were too.
beforehand,
I thought you
but
were good.
unfortunately, like I said, they said they randomized it when you jumped into the queue, and I ended up at 20,000. There were people who ended up at
Uh,
50,000 and things like that. So it just depends on where you landed and if you got lucky. And I think the biggest thing that would have helped me was to have multiple devices ready to go trying to get a landing spot in the waiting line.
mm,
I only had my one cell phone, and by the time it was even a chance to change up and do what multiple people did who got tickets, it was too late. So but
yeah.
I'm not disappointed overall. Like I said, I was still able to get you tickets to go and we'll still be able to watch the show, obviously. I think I'm going to utilize some of my money to just buy a cool little projector and watch the show on a big screen when it comes. So,
I'm still just boggled that they wouldn't book a bigger arena. I know they're saying they're surprised they sold out that quickly, but how are you really that surprised? I know the Sears Center is special. I get all that, but I really feel like go to Chicago, but you know, go to a big arena.
yeah, that part is definitely disappointing for me, especially after not being able to purchase tickets. I wouldn't have minded being deep in some seats just to have been able to attend and for other
Right?
people to have been able to attend and had that big, almost WrestleMania type feel to an independent show
Mm-hmm.
headlined by Jericho and Adam Page and something like that. So I thought that would have been cool. And you're right there. And especially seeing the secondary market and how you see tickets on sale today for still $125 that were
Yeah.
originally 30. So it's
Yeah.
disappointing in that factor. What they definitely did was they provided a great market for ticket resale companies to make a ton of money off of this
Oh
show, though.
yeah,
So
there's that for sure. And I mean, what can you do? I expect this is going to be the last time we're running a major show at such a small arena. I don't expect they're going to do that again. That would seem like if they did that again, then I feel like that's making the same mistake twice. I could understand going in thinking, well, what if we don't sell out? What if we book this big, 30,000 person arena and then only half the people buy tickets? But I really feel like they should have known, but whatever. As long as it doesn't happen again in that fashion, it's cool.
yeah, and at this point, it's just now we got to wait for the next big show. I
Yeah.
think that's the most disappointing part as a fan is, well, you missed out on this chance and now you can wait, but it's going to be a little while now, as you could see. So, but hopefully they learned from this and utilize the fact that
Hmm.
they obviously have a bigger fan base willing to travel and see them, that they should definitely go bigger next time.
Hmm.
And then speaking of other shows that are going to be going on in the United States, the New Japan show in Dallas, the lineup has sort of been set for that. And one glaring piece of that is that Jon Moxley won't be appearing on that show.
Yeah.
This comes as a surprise to many people. I didn't really think that this would be a thing, but I'm not surprised now that it is a thing.
I don't understand this at all. I actually don't. It's weird because I think you tweeted about this. Why is the U.S. champion not allowed to be on the U.S. shows? That's so odd, and that just confirms. I think I mentioned last week we were wondering if he was going to be showing up to any of the AEW events with the title. No, definitely not. If that's the case here.
Yeah, I thought that was a big point of this as well, was that he probably won't be referenced as the New Japan champion or anything like that. They might, just because they don't want to treat their fans dumb, but I think that you're right. I think it's just a point of AEW's not really going to play ball with New Japan unless New Japan is willing to play as well. They let Moxley go over and wrestle in Japan because they're not gonna withhold his international deal or anything like that, but coming over to the US and appearing on US TV, because that show, I believe, is either going to air live or, like, the next day.
Yeah.
So,
I,
I can't blame them, especially because it would be on TV. They don't wanna give up Moxley's first, like, television date to New Japan, a company that's really not willing to do anything with them or for them. So,
I think the weirdest
like I
thing
said,
for me,
I wasn't expecting it, but I'm not surprised. This is business.
it's a really weird situation. I feel like I get it. They have their ROH deal. AEW is doing what's right for them. New Japan's doing what's right for them. I just feel like down the line, this is going to be a relationship that's going to happen at some point. Maybe a year, maybe 5 years. It's going to happen. But it's just so odd to me that New Japan and AEW are not working together right away.
I think events like this are what make me more skeptical that they will work together down the line. I
Hmm.
think it is somewhat inevitable, especially because there are just matches that, as a wrestling fan, you feel must happen, such
Yeah.
as like Omega versus Ibushi. That's the first one that I can think of.
Oh,
That's a
yeah.
match that needs to happen at like a Wrestle Kingdom show or something like that. It is definitely a little bit weird though, especially seeing that, from at least from a fan standpoint, it looked like AEW was playing super fair with New Japan, and they were just letting New Japan utilize
Right.
these talents and sort of trying to develop that relationship. But I think now, as you see, and I like I said, I think the biggest point of it is that that show would have aired on Access TV the next night,
Hmm.
and you don't want to give away your first showing of Jon Moxley on TV, even though Access isn't a big station. You don't want to give that away when you want to have him on TNT 2 months later.
Sure. That
So,
makes sense.
and then speaking of Jon Moxley, he appeared for a Northeast wrestling event called the Brass City Brawl in Waterbury, Connecticut. I'm not really familiar with the new company up there, but he faced off with Darby Allin, and he had a lot of good things to say about Darby post match. So I'm gonna play those for you and get your reaction to that.
You better be damn grateful that you got to be here tonight and witness Darby Allin live in person. Because for better or for worse in this business, sometimes crazy equals money. And Darby Allin is going to be in a big spot real soon. So enjoy Mike.
So there we hear Jon Moxley just saying that Darby Allin is going to be a big star and just putting Darby over big time for that local crowd. But
Hmm.
it's interesting to see Moxley's thoughts of that. He had earlier said that he had never even heard of Darby before this week, so it's cool to see him put that over.
It is, and we've talked about it a lot, but like everything that John has done so far, it's just been putting people over, working with people to get them to be bigger and bigger. He's really doing a lot of work that, again, he doesn't have to do, and it's completely respectable and amazing that he is putting so many people over.
Yeah, and it's something that you just have to appreciate as a fan, and
Yeah.
I take it serious,
Oh,
the
yeah.
way he's putting Darby over, and I saw clips of this match, and I believe at some point Darby was either handcuffed or had himself handcuffed or something, and was just throwing himself around. It was awesome to see, and you see Darby just continue to do this and put his body on the line
Hmm.
and wrestle with a reckless style, and inevitably that is going to pay off for him. He's started to get a little bit of traction and started to get a little bit more attention. He had a little bit of a push and evolve, but now that he's come into AEW, he's been treated as a single solo like rising star, and
Hmm.
that's interesting to me, and I'm interested to see how far they're willing to go with that with Darby and how well he connects with an audience. So
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And I think, especially last week's road to what we're seeing with, because I don't think Jon Moxley's just going to put somebody over, especially in an indie show, for the sake of it. I think he actually, like you said, believed everything he's saying. And with that said, the more and more I'm seeing of Darby Allin, the more and more I really do believe exactly that he is going to be a big star.
Yeah, and that's something we'll just have to wait and see on. Then this week we also had Tony Khan do an interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin for Stone Cold's podcast. During this interview, Tony discussed their TV deal with TNT. He also discussed the women's singles and eventual tag team championships that's going to come down the line. And we'll talk more about the women's singles championship here in a couple minutes. But he revealed that there would be a tag team tournament to crown new tag team champions down the line. And I think that's a really interesting thing to focus on. Have you heard anything about that tag team tournament?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it. I've also heard some people saying you're giving your title match. Sorry, I have heard people also saying little grievances that the the main title contendership is being decided with the battle royal with a lot of no name people and like a couple big names, and then you're doing a big tournament for the tag teams. But I don't necessarily agree with that logic because from the beginning they've been talking about putting a lot more emphasis on their tag team division in AEW. So this just seems like a natural thing to me. You've also had success with tag team tournaments like the NXT ones, the Dusty Rhodes ones. And I feel like this just makes perfect sense. Of course, you would have a tag team tournament. You're also going to be able to showcase your division a lot more. And I mean, I know we'll be talking more about that with SCU and the match that got announced and, all that nonsense. Not nonsense, good stuff. But I think it's good. I think it's an overall smart move. And I'm hoping we get more tournaments to decide these early contenders and champions.
Yeah, I appreciate the idea of a tournament for the tag teams. I understand people's gripe with the singles and how that goes down, I guess, just going with a one-on-one match and then a battle royal. But you have to establish different ways to create contenders. That's something that Tony Khan
Mm-hmm.
is trying to emphasize. But as we create contenders through a tournament, and tag team tournaments have been successful, and it's a
Yeah.
good way to introduce new tag teams and new stars
Mm-hmm.
into a division that they want to put emphasis on. So I think this is a great thing. And I think him revealing it now via a podcast that is obviously pretty popular and will then gain traction throughout wrestling news sites, I think that that's super important as well,
Yeah.
because he's just spreading the information of this tournament now, and people are going to start getting to know about it. And I hope that it isn't just a tournament to make the Young Bucks your first tag team champions. But outside of that, I'm excited for the tag team tournament.
I
And then
very much
also
agree with
during
that.
this interview, he emphasized the idea that wins and losses are going to be something really important in crowning champions.
Yeah.
And I also have a clip of that, so we'll listen to that really quick.
In establishing a promotion is established that the championship is what everybody's trying to attain. And how do you attain the championship? You do it by winning matches. You do it by going on a run of form and establishing, a streak, by winning a big match, by going out there and having a title eliminator like a Chris Jericho versus a Kenny Omega, where the winner is going to go out and fight an open battle royal winner, and that's how we get to it. I'm really excited about what we're going to do going forward with that stuff.
So it's just interesting to see Khan's emphasis on the idea of creating different ways to create a championship contender, but also emphasizing the fact that you must win some matches and go on somewhat of a run to become a contender for the championship.
And I think the other thing here is we've heard, I believe Cody, it might have been Kenny, say this, and they're executive vice presidents, but it feels a lot different when the actual guy, the money man behind all this, is saying wins and losses matter, because that is without a shadow of a doubt. That means that's going to be the case, and that makes me very happy. I 100% agree with everything you said. I remember when Evolve first started, how stoked I was on the idea of like that system. And Chikara too, I always loved the point system where you had to win 3 matches in a row. I wouldn't even mind them like introducing their own system of how to get to a certain spot or how to get those matches, and be a little different in that regard. Whatever they do, though, I'm just happy they're putting an emphasis on this, because it's been far too long that we've been subjected to a lot of WWE where it's just nonsense. A guy loses 3 times in a row and then he gets a shot for the title and it doesn't make any sense and everything's weird, and somebody beats the champion and then they're never seen again. It's all very odd, and so I'm really glad we're seeing a contrast. And they did mention, like you said, Reset, that there is not going to be an off season with AEW and their programming, and I think that's a good thing to note. That it's probably not going to be something like a reset, or if it is, it's you're going to know when it happens, almost like the draft, probably. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do, and whatever it is, I feel like I'm going to enjoy it.
I think that it could end up being something like a draft process, especially with Tony Khan's involvement in
Mhm.
professional football. It makes sense that he would incorporate maybe even a combine and draft aspect of, okay, we're signing 10 new guys
That'd
and
be
we're
cool.
just going to transition them in or something. Somehow that you bring them in, or you say you're just drafting guys off of the independent scene into wrestling and you just do a draft process within wrestling. I don't It's never
That'd be
been done
sick.
before, but who's to say it can't be done?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Have 20 guy or any independent wrestler that's available put their name in for a contract, and you go through them and then you draft 10 of them straight up.
Yep. I
I
think that'd
think
be amazing.
that would be amazing, and I think just then you could do a road to series of just a combine of seeing them wrestle or give
Hmm.
promos or things like that, and it would be interesting as a fan, I think.
Oh yeah.
So you never know if they could do something like that down the line, and that's just something I would hope for.
I watch drafts for sports I don't even know, and I have no idea what's going on or who any of these people are. So if it was wrestling, I think I would like that a lot.
Absolutely, man. And then just coming off of the heels of the tag team tournament announcement, they announced a tag team match for Fyter Fest where the winner will receive a first round bye in the tag team tournament. That match will involve Private Party versus SCU versus the Best Friends.
Hmm.
This is going to be part of the Fyter Fest buy-in pre-show. And if any of the international fans haven't heard yet, you will be able to purchase the Fyter Fest show on Fight. I think it's about $10.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that it's going to cost any money for international fans, as obviously the US fans are getting it for free. But it's just the way things break down, I suppose. At the end of the day, you guys got double or nothing for a way cheaper price than US fans did, so it should all break down somehow.
It's also
But overall,
streaming
I'm excited about
services.
this tag team match, and how do you feel? You're gonna see this tag team match live.
Oh god, I'm super excited. One, I love 2v2v2s. Two, I love the best friends and I want them I love everybody in this match. Obviously, I've never seen Private Party in person, but I have seen SCU. I have seen Trent. I haven't seen Chuck, but so that's another reason I'm really excited. I actually get to see Chuck Taylor live, which is going to be a lot of fun. And just overall, it's going to be a great match. I mean, look at it. It's everything that I could want. And I'm really hoping the best friends win. That's just me. But I also, saying that, have no idea who's going to win. And I also really like that this is not just a tag match. There is an incentive to win this tag match, and there's a reason I should care.
Yeah, it's essentially a first round match in the tag team
Mhm.
tournament, basically. It just gives AEW the opportunity to use the other two tag teams in the tournament again, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just speaking of tag teams, as we said earlier, the Young Bucks took a trip down to Mexico, and while they were down there, they had a match against the Lucha Brothers at the AAA Verano de Escandalo event. And in that event, the Young Bucks lost the tag team championships to the Lucha Brothers. Um, this was interesting, and they actually covered it a lot more in the Being the Elite show. So we'll just jump right into Being the Elite. Being the Elite opens up with Matt Jackson, and he's watching Cody and Dustin hug it out after Double or Nothing. He rolls his eyes at Cody Rhodes' speech. From there, we get a regular introduction to Being the Elite. After that, we see the Young Bucks. They're on their way to Mexico. They're taking Brandon Cutler with them everywhere now, which makes sense. If you're going to pay him, you might as well make him work for it. We then lead up to this is all in a lead up to the Verando de Escandalo event. They give thanks to the fans for selling out All Out so quickly in the pool at the hotel. This was weird because I think they were just trying to show off their camera could go underwater.
Yeah, I think they were too.
We then see Kenny Omega. He's at E3 to work off some steam after getting attacked by Jon Moxley at Double or Nothing. He discusses that a little bit, but then he goes on to say that he's here to play games to get into a better mood. We get some clips of him playing various games with some esports stars. They also mention Xavier Woods a little bit, which I thought was interesting, but probably means nothing.
Hmm.
After that, we get a Coca-Cola coffee ad, or maybe not an ad, where Matt Jackson is taking a drink of some fake Coca-Cola coffee, and he says it's actually not that bad. I don't really know what this was about.
I kind of want to
After
try
that, we
it.
get Christopher Daniels. He's talking to his dog. and he talks himself into a match with Cena. He says that wins and losses matter in AEW, and a win over Cena is going to be a big deal. So this is just a confirmation of Christopher Daniels versus Cena, so that's exciting. We then see some clips of a large crowd showing up for that event in Mexico, and everybody's just lining up going into the arena. We then transition backstage in the arena where Sammy G is backstage with Brandon Cutler, and he gives him some congratulations for getting his contracts with AEW, but he makes fun of Brandon Cutler for crying on camera and says that a real man would never do that. When Brandon Cutler walks away, Sammy G says, "What a pussy," but Cutler forgot something, so he obviously heard Sammy G say that. We then get everybody's favorite segment, the Being the Elite mailbag, which is no longer my favorite segment,
Yep.
in which Nick Jackson is asked which indie venue he misses the most. He says that Reseda is going to be the venue he misses the most because PWG helped get them where they are today.
Mhm.
So that makes sense. But then we have Matt Jackson, and he's asked about spray tan. He says that they use quick tan. I don't want this to be part of Being the Elite mailbag, but whatever. Brandon Cutler's backstage again, and he's going to talk to the Young Bucks. They say that he looks a little sad or something. Sammy G cuts in, and Brandon Cutler walks away. Sammy says it was nice of the Bucks to give their friend a deal, but he was a little confused about it at first, and it dawned on him every company needs a job guy. He says that their match was great. He didn't get to watch it, but he heard it from backstage, and it was awesome. And then he walks away. The Young the Young Bucks say they haven't even had their match yet, so they're a little confused with what Sammy G is doing. Just some more douchebag stuff from Sammy G now. And then we see Taya Valkyrie. She's with Sunny Kiss, and Luchasaurus strolls by both of them. He's got Jungle Boy on his shoulders, who does a sit up to dodge the door frame. And Jungle Boy sits up and he says hey to them before they keep walking. Sunny Kiss laughs at how awkward this all was. And then to close out Being the Elite, Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix are celebrating their victory over the Young Bucks. They say a lot of stuff in Spanish that no one can understand because there are no subtitles, but they do announce that their partner for Fyter Fest is going to be none other than Laredo Kid. So this is exciting. What did you think of the show overall, AJ?
Not as I don't like it as much as the last two or the last few actually, but I liked it. I didn't have a big issue. I feel like they're kind of in a point where it's a slow news day, but I think I've said this every single time that there's been a Being the Elite. If the Being the Elite has wrestling on it, I like it more, and that's the same for this. But that said, there were some awkward moments. The pool thing, I don't get why we're doing that in the pool. I mean, cool.
Coffee thing.
Yeah, we had two advertisements, or maybe they weren't advertisements. As cool as Coca-Cola coffee sounds, I'm not sure what the point of that was. Maybe
And
it was
they
just a
got you,
bit.
dude. You said it right after I talked about it. You wanted to
I
buy it.
would
They
buy it.
got you.
I mean, yeah, I'm a mark, man. I would
The
totally
ad
buy it.
worked.
But and then you can get spray tan. I don't know. That stuff was weird to me, but whatever. The mailbag, like you said, half of it was good.
Not as good anymore.
I think the cool thing here, and it's not like we didn't. I think this was announced prior, but Christopher
This
Daniels
is
and
gonna be
Cena.
another episode where they say we only talk bad about
No,
AEW, but this
no, because I'm
wasn't even
about
a
to talk
bad
good.
episode.
Because Christopher Daniels and Cena getting confirmed is really cool. And like we were talking earlier about wins and losses mattering, this is kind of an important match when you think about it in that light, because you have Christopher Daniels and you have Cena, and you know that Cena has another one-on-one at Fight for the Fallen. And so it's going to be really interesting because I don't think you'd have him lose
Damn, you
twice,
get to see 2 SEMA matches
right?
in, like, the span of a month. That should be pretty dope.
But like on that note, and yeah, we'll be. But on that note, I don't think you want to have Cena losing twice in a row. And I don't know which match Seema's going over, but I would expect it to be this one, not the Kenny Omega one. But
Well, and that would be 3 in a row if he lost to Omega and Daniels
mhm,
because he already lost at the first show, so SEMA really needs a victory here
yeah,
going into his match against Kenny Omega. That would be my biggest assumption, especially as they try to push wins and losses being an important thing.
mhm,
And if they wanna make SEMA anything of a star right away, that's gonna be what they need to do is have him win at least this match and then have a good showing against
I
Omega.
agree.
So,
And I think that's what they're gonna do. This is the only time in a very long time where I've really had a thought of, I think this guy is gonna win, and I don't even think it's gonna be bad because I still might be wrong, and I'm really interested just in watching that because I love Cena, I love Daniels, I think it's gonna be great. That was probably my favorite part. The Sammy G stuff, dude, I want to love Sammy G. Why are they making him a heel? I want to love
I
him.
love it. I love
I
it.
want him to be happy and nice all the time. By the way, no MJF on this episode, which would be the first time in a while, right?
Yeah, that is true.
And
Not really much of Adam Page either.
no Adam Page, but I'm accustomed to that. Um,
Yeah, we're getting used to it as we try to make Adam Page a big deal. We don't, but at least they haven't messed with him at all
no,
since Double or Nothing, so that's good.
I don't know. I thought it was a solid episode. I liked seeing the match. The title changed hands or the
New
titles.
faces is all it is, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that about sums it up. I mean, Young Bucks lost the titles. That's interesting enough. You can probably find the match, but if you want to check it out just for that, check it out. Uh, that's about it for me. It was fun. I was fine, and it wasn't my favorite episode. Definitely
I
was not my
liked the
least.
end of it because they did end up on the AEW YouTube. They
That's
ended
true.
up releasing that promo with subtitles,
It
so
was
I did
pretty cool.
appreciate that. And then announcing Laredo Kid as their partner, I don't really think that it helps them at all because
No.
going from Pac to a now smaller partner already isn't going to do much. But I did see a recent Laredo Kid match that was really exciting against El Hijo de Vikingo. But that covers everything for being the elite this week. We also got a new episode of Road to Fyter Fest. This episode started with Brandy, and she's just talking about all of the all out ticket sales, and she thanks all of the fans. She says that she was excited about all these sales and says that she's excited they have a bunch of surprises for the event. She says that they can't really talk about too many of the surprises, but announces that the women's championship will be unveiled at All Out, so that's exciting.
Mhm.
From there, we get Alex Jabali of CEO Gaming, and he talks about how he started this CEO Gaming Fest and discussed how his cross promotion with wrestling has been beneficial for both sides in the past. He says that Kenny Omega helped inspire him, and he decided to start training because of Omega. But while he was training last year, he ruptured his Achilles heel. Even though he ruptured his Achilles, he still was involved in the match at CEO last year, but he wrestled in a boot. This year, he wants to show his potential at Fyter Fest versus Michael Nakazawa. After that, we get Christopher Daniels in a much more serious role.
Mhm.
He's discussing his history with SEMA. He says that in 1999, as Curryman and Michinoku Pro, he grouped up with SEMA, and SEMA showed Christopher Daniels the ropes. He credits SEMA for his past success and says that SEMA will gain exposure from this matchup. SEMA wants to show the Western wrestling world his talent, but Christopher Daniels is curious if he can even still perform at the top level in singles competition because Daniels himself has only been working tag team matches for the last 6 months. Speaking of tag teams, we get Private Party to close out this episode of Road 2, and they just discuss how they were growing up in Brooklyn. They grew up in a bad place, and their friends didn't really encourage them, especially when they talked about dreaming of becoming wrestlers. They got a lot of peer pressure from their friends to do negative things, but instead they joined the House of Glory, and both of them ended up training together, and they found a connection with each other, both being fans of Jeff Hardy. They credit their trainer, Amazing Red, for their success and discuss how when AEW contacted them, Amazing Red was there with them, and they all got to have this awesome moment together. And that was just cool. Then they have a great connection as a tag team. You can tell that these two care
Mhm.
about each other and they have a friendly competition. And their motto is essentially work hard and party harder. So it was cool to see Private Party get this little 4-minute dedication to
Yeah.
them to really elevate them as a tag team. The only gripe I had with that personally was just the music was consistently the same boring song. But otherwise, what do you think of this episode,
I
AJ?
liked it. I mean, it was solid. I'm gonna say kind of same thing with being the elite. It's not my favorite. It's definitely not my least favorite. It was good. I really did like the private party stuff. It was long, but I didn't mind that. I guess the only reason I would say I would have if I was going to be nitpicky that I would have any issue with it being long is that I was already sold on Private Party from like the 30-second clip we got of them just kicking ass, which was enough for me to be like, oh, this is awesome. I can't wait to see them. But getting this backstory absolutely made me, I don't know, it was wholesome and nice, and it made me feel more for the team. The other part I really liked was again Daniels. Chris Daniels is an incredible talent. He's an incredible wrestler. I know he's getting long in the tooth, but Jericho's long in the tooth, and he's still kicking ass. So who cares? And I don't know. I thought it was nice. The Jabali stuff was, I guess, necessary. If you're gonna have the Jabali and Nakazawa match, which we've voiced our opinions on that, it's not exactly our favorite thing, to put it nicely. But if you're gonna do it, obviously you should talk about it on Road to Fighter Fest. Where else are you gonna talk about it? So I understand that. I did not know Alex Jabali was the guy in Dive Kick, a game I like. So I kind of like him a little bit more now. I'm still not jazzed about the match, but I'm also very open to be surprised. And I guess going into this match with such low expectations. Their bare minimum will probably help because I do not expect Alex Trebali and Michael Nakazawa to have a great. I expect this to be kind of like Daniels and Stephen Amell from All In, but I don't know. It's but like with less star power. But anyways, that sounds so mean. It was fine, and what Brandy said about the women's title is cool. It's a little early to even mention that. I guess Khan talked about it on the podcast, so you might as well. But I don't know. It was fine.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily early. I think it's right on pace, in my
You're
opinion.
right. It's
You're
only like a few
crowning your
months away.
first men's champion, and then you crown, or you at least begin the discussion for your first women's
It
champion. You
feels
already
longer
have
than
the
it is.
discussion going for the tag team champion. So I think that it's nice. I liked that they were beginning to roll out the announcement of that. I also just appreciated in this episode that we're starting to present new people. Over the last week or so, I've began rewatching the Road to Double or Nothing series as I watched Double or Nothing with my girlfriend, and we tried to get her interested in AEW. And in watching that series over the 16 episodes, I didn't feel like there were a lot of episodes that were dedicated to presenting people the way they did Private Party in this episode. There it happened a lot, but it wasn't enough in my opinion. They spent a lot of time like talking about theme songs and
Yeah.
gear and I understand all of that and trying to give that, but it was really hard going into Double or Nothing because I felt like we still didn't have a lot of information for my girlfriend to understand what needed to
Hmm.
be understood going into the show. So I still was able to break a lot of it down for her. I think that they did an awesome job down the stretch promoting the Kenny and Jericho match and promoting the Cody and Dustin match, which we paused the show the other day right before the Cody and Dustin match and are going to go back to it. And I think that those matches will help draw her in as a fan because they got the real dedication into it. Um, Outside of that, there wasn't a lot to inform her, educate her outside of those two matches.
Yeah.
So that's where I appreciated this inside look at Private Party and inside look at Christopher Daniels versus SEMA. And if they're doing the Jabali match, I guess it makes sense to tell us
Yeah.
why.
On note, and I 100% agree with you. There is a philosophy with WWE's weekly programming that I do agree with. And that is they want it to where if you're channel surfing and you just happen upon Raw or SmackDown, you can jump in and understand what's going on in a fairly quick amount of time. And like you said, there were a lot of people who watch. You didn't say that, but like for lack of better words, a lot of people who watched Double or Nothing, and I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, "I don't know who any of these guys are." And while they did talk about a few of those guys, they didn't talk about every person in that battle royal. They didn't talk about every person who had a match. They talked about the big matches, but you're right. There was something a little bit lacking about really giving us insights onto these people who are supposedly supposed to be, bigger stars and kind of have notoriety down the line, especially. And if you have all this time to do it, why aren't you doing it? Or just let them record their own stuff and just use it in being the elite at least, which like I like that we got that Private Party 30-second video, like I said, in being the elite where we're just showing them off. And that made me already, yeah, okay, these guys look great. If you have these platforms and you can, especially being the elite, where you can basically do whatever the hell you want, why aren't you showing these people off more? It's really just does a disservice, I think, and it makes people more confused when they go to actually watch the show because not everybody's watching Being the Elite and Road 2.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we definitely didn't dive into the Being the Elite series going into Double or Nothing. There's a lot more like tongue in cheek
Mm-hmm.
references and stuff in Being the Elite that I'm not really gonna try and get my girlfriend into, especially if I want her to be
Yeah.
interested in AEW. She's never really been interested in wrestling, but as we watched the Road 2 series, I could see that they emphasized Britt Baker. So when we watched Britt Baker, she was like, "Oh, she was cool." When Sunny Kiss was out there, she knew who Sunny
Yeah.
Kiss was, and she wasn't all behind some of like there was just some of the moves that Sunny Kiss did that my girlfriend was like, "Whoa, that's a little too much for me," which I was sort of feeling the same way, so it's understandable. And it's just like things like that as watching from a casual fan perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I wish that they had done a little bit more, especially like you say with the reference to WWE. I understand WWE's card pacing a little bit more now because if you watch as a casual fan, up till this Cody match, we haven't really had a lot for her to be invested in as a fan, because what they emphasized is all at the top of the
Yeah.
card. So the bottom of the card is really for your fans who are dedicated. Your casual fans don't know anything that's going on. And I was able to break a lot of it down for her. And before we watched the show, I did show her the Adam Page stuff from being the Elite to at least get her to understand what was happening when that happened in the show. But otherwise, there wasn't a lot for her to understand or for me to really explain to her that from what we had watched, because they didn't present any of the beginning of the card.
No, 100% I agree. And I think, I mean, we're complaining about something that they did do in this episode. Complaining is a bad word, but we're mentioning something. This episode, obviously, we're promoting guys who we don't know as much about, and that's great. So hopefully they just keep on that ball and they just keep that rolling of here's more people who you might not be familiar with and here's more about them. Stuff you can even play during the pre-show events.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a big part of it. They'll continue to use this private party thing. They'll probably put it on their AEW page and things like that to help introduce this tag team to fans. And I think that's the most important part. Like you said, we're really discussing from what I had watched before and how they had actually did it this episode. So I think it's a good point, and it's a good thing that they're continuing to do, and hopefully they'll do it on next week's episode. That'll be the go home episode. And I think that's something to keep an eye out for. When we watched the go home episodes to the Road to series before, we felt a little bit underwhelmed. We felt a little bit like they weren't doing much to promote the matches on the card. Right now, we've gotten some Darby promotion. We got the Joey Janela promotion. We've gotten this private party promotion. Like, they've done a good job. They've promoted the SEMA match. They've promoted a lot of these matches pretty
really
well. They didn't need to do much for the Young Bucks versus the Penta Brothers, but they obviously have some of that in there as well.
I know we have podcasts literally titled "Where in the World is Adam Page?" But where in the world is Adam Page? If you haven't watched ROH or New Japan, you don't know who the hell Adam Page is, and that makes sense. You don't understand why it was cool to see him walking out at the Battle Royale and kicking ass. You don't get why him coming out at that promotion to face Pac was so cool, because it's Adam Page, but they don't know it's Adam Page. And so you really, if he's going to be the guy, and we want, from the episode 1, we talked about how excited we were that Adam Page looks like he's going to be the guy. But if he is, then you got to make him that.
But that really just wraps up everything for the Road to Fyter Fest. It was awesome to see them continue to put that emphasis on private party, and now the Fyter Fest card just looks super exciting from top to bottom. Next week we'll go through the whole card and sort of do predictions.
Honestly, it's going to be a great card. I think if you were to go back and listen to us talk about Fyter Fest, nobody expected it to be a show of this magnitude with this many big matches. I think I at least was expecting, okay, they're going to have 3 or 4 matches, maybe 4. I was expecting 3. And, they're going to be small and maybe showcase some young guys, and they're going to do a little event just to grease elbows with CEO and, make that relationship with esports better. This is a show. This is a wrestling show where they're really, okay, it's going to sound like a pun, but they're really going all out. They're really trying. It really does give you the impression that even the small shows are not small shows, that even at Fyter Fest or Fight for the Fallen, big things could happen because everybody's there. It's packed.
I'm excited for next week's episode where we're going to get to run down everything and just how we feel about each match and our predictions for each match. Because like you said, I was expecting or anticipating 4 or 5 matches. And when they had announced 4 or 5 matches, I was like, okay, cool, we got a card. And then they just have continued to add more and more matches. They added the triple threat women's match as well, and the tag team match as well. So it's just like they continue to add more matches to a card that I already was satisfied with. And now I'm really excited for the show. At one point, it was Michael Nakazawa versus Alex Jabali and Cody versus Darby Allin, and that's about all we had announced. Now it's a full-fledged card, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too.
But with all that excitement, that pretty much wraps things up for the All Elite podcast this week. AJ, go ahead and plug your socials.
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, or you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy, Fitzy.
And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at All Elite Andy. You can also follow the podcast at All Elite Podcast. Thanks for joining us every week, guys, and continuing to support the podcast. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Every company needs a job guy. And Nick, you're right. He is a good guy. Good for him. You know what's even better though? Y'all's match tonight. I didn't watch it. No. I didn't watch it, but I heard it. And wow! Good stuff as always. Super Kick Party. Loved it. Anyways, I gotta go. Gotta go do vlog stuff, you know. Anyways, bye guys.